I think we had to, when you look back, it's easy to kind of say that you did all the right things. It really started, this particular one around the ISO standard for the interoperability was really much driven by efficiencies in a much smaller perspective than the life cycle. That was added later. It was kind of like, how do you just get people that work on a set of problems to operate well together? So that, within Bechtel, that just starts with kind of getting the functions to work between themselves. And then next it is, how do you bring in a third party, and how do you bring in, and then it just grew from there into actually become a full life cycle view later. But it started with a smaller view in the early going. And then we used I can't say we, but the consortium used the model that was very much generated by the semiconductor industry. They got that really well planned, and that was used as a model in the early going to figure out how actually an industry with a whole bunch of participants can actually see the better of the total rather than in the individual parts.
I think also from a vendor perspective, just the realization that this problem's so big and there's so many places that all of us can add value. You can't go into every engagement and say we have to reinvent the world every single time. And I think a lot of us who spent years in services, every time you had an engagement, even if you won the deal, now we're starting from first principles of how would we describe a valve and how would we do all this again. And you just felt like we're not getting anywhere. We're just doing the same thing over and over again. So to be able to go in and just add value on a given information model and add and fill the gaps and the white spaces, I think everyone wins in that scenario.
Well, a lot of cloud, when you look up, no clouds are the same in the sky. But I think it's the same thing. To be honest, like I said, we started this long before people talked about clouds. And we just wanted to find a different way to do efficiencies. And we operate probably 98% of what we deal with in our own private cloud. So we actually don't rely a lot on third parties. We have a few applications that are running in the cloud by a third party, and we have actually had good results with those. Some of that is in our financial systems, so we do all expense reporting and that kind of stuff in it, and we do some of our human resources work in the cloud, and both of those have worked very well for us. Such things as high volume email, we're running that in our private cloud. That is probably primarily because of policies, because we have a tough time finding out how we can actually move email to systems that we don't know where they are. And that's not because we don't trust it, it's literally because of compliance issues and that kind of stuff. So we have not been able to move a lot of the things into the public cloud because of policies.
I think you also have to look at bandwidth, right, within the organization and the areas that are going to use the cloud. I think you have to look at the service level agreements with your vendor as well to make sure that uptime and performance are clearly stated and the expectations are met.
Yeah, we have some experience as well with that, and it's been mixed. There's really, man, if you want to implement something fast and standardized, man, it's a miracle from that perspective. But at times, some of them can turn into click and wait systems, which I'm sure everyone's had that experience. You have to be a very savvy buyer. You have to know what an SLA is and how to read it and how to negotiate it. How do you measure some of those things? I think it also stresses internal IT departments. When you start doing that, you become much more chatty outside, and you may or may not have network expertise inside your company to troubleshoot some of the issues. And it's going to happen, but I think the economics, of the performance will rule how fast it rolls out. Some installations I think are better than others.
The answer is absolutely. Again, process safety being a primary deliverable. It is included, it is addressed in the AIM strategy. It's probably an offline discussion as some of the details of how all of it is fit together, but but the answer, I think, is process safety is an absolute imperative. It's first among operational and lifecycle deliverables.
Well, I would throw in there that I also think that safety is the driver, as I brought up earlier, that is pushing some of the interoperability to occur, because the information is locked in different systems that are needed to follow your HAZOPs, your PSMs, those type of things. So I'd say, from our perspective, we are offering things that will enable the PSM to be available. We're not the PSM experts per se. There are a lot of companies that do that specifically, but having the accessibility to the engineering records and documentation to support the needs of PSM are definitely there.
I'll also say that I'll go back to the nuclear industry, which has switched from talking about corrective action and incident reporting to human performance. So their full life cycles now of incidents are related to the assets, but once the issue is closed and even they have a long-term solution, they have now processes that are being monitored by IMPO to go in and let's look at the human factors of how can we change behavior so this never happens again, and close looping that. And so tying that in with the asset even gets you into a bit of knowledge management type of activity, which of course we all need too as everyone starts to retire who has been working on these things for the last 30 years. Absolutely. So I think lessons learned safety, it's all tied together. And when you have the silo workflow processes, you absolutely miss out on that. And I think a lot of people are seeing that they have to pull that together. And the ARC model really speaks to that. If you can pull that and link all those things together, that's really what it's all about. And the regulation's there to force us to do the safety, but the safety is the issue we have to get to.
It is a big isolation. There's a big isolation between what we see as conventional IT versus what is automation. And we have seen some early indications from RFPs from customers where they ask for a closer relationship between those two. And we have kind of taken that on a one-off, and we kind of tried to do it. I would say that it's extremely immature of how to drive that together. And automation, when you then go to the next level of automation and you see where IT is coming, it is converging. And as they converge, you have to kind of figure out how to get that into Patrick's thing into the plans, in the upfront plans, and they are not happening today. We are not seeing that.
I think we
Jerry, do you have, as part of EATech, what perhaps something you could do?
I mean, it would be, when you think about something like this, adding new scope to a successful initiative, okay, that's one approach, and perhaps it helps us here, but we also would have the risk of becoming too large, and therefore the results are, we slow down, basically, we lose momentum. So I also today don't have an answer, but I do think that there are best practices that we can apply to address how we bring in automation. And it needs to happen.
I was just going to say, I mean, I would hope that the owners would push us harder, because as it was stated on the information management side, I think the IT departments, especially over the last 5 or 6 years, have done a real good job of embracing the business processes as well as just IT. But just an observation, it seems like, at least in the brownfield plants, the automation is just technology and getting that data out, which is very important, but that team isn't integrated with the IT team that's working with the business process owners.
Guys, I think that one of the things is that the interoperability aspect, that I don't think will complicate, Jerry, the growth of it. I think if they are, as vendors, to understand what those objects are and how to do that would be very beneficial for the industry overall. And I agree with you with the brownfield places. Now, we do have major cap projects that are going on in the world, I recognize, but we do have a lot of major brownfield area that I think having that compatibility of interoperability will only drive a better, safer risk, reliability, all the things that come together. So I think there's some convergence that we could have and get some benefits from that. And I think that can drive further back to feed as you're doing smaller projects that might be enhancements or upgrades to facilities.